The church bell struck once, then twice. Before the third toll was cut short by a sound no one could mistake. A scream. Piercing, guttural, not from fear, but grief. Father Ellis collapsed near the altar, clutching his chest, eyes wide as if meeting a ghost. 3 pews back, his estranged son Michael stood frozen, his hand still in his coat pocket where the unopened letter from the hospital rested. A woman gasped. An old nun dropped her rosary. No one moved. Time fractured. "Why now?" Michael whispered, barely audible over the silence that fell like winter snow. He hadn't spoken to his father in 18 years. Not since that night. The night of the truth. And now, just like that, he was gone. But, as Sister Agnes rushed to his side, tears streaking her wrinkled face, she said something no one expected. "The truth doesn't die with the man, it lives with those he wounded." Her voice cracked, but it cut through the stillness like scripture. "And Michael, your truth starts now." Michael didn't kneel. He didn't cry. He just stood there, hollow, as if someone had scooped the breath from his lungs. "Not like this," he muttered. People were moving now, too slow, too careful, as if afraid to disturb the finality in the air. A paramedic called time of death. Sister Agnes whispered something into the priest's ear that only God could hear. Michael's eyes didn't flinch. He kept seeing his father's hand reaching out just before the collapse, toward him, toward the envelope. That letter, what was in it? Why now? Why did the nurse call him after all these years and say, "He wants you to have this"? It felt like a trap, or a curse, or maybe the one thing he'd waited for his whole life. But he didn't move. Not yet. The truth wasn't in the letter. It was in the silence his father had left behind. Years ago, Michael had sworn never to return to this church, never to set foot near the pulpit where his father once preached about love while hiding betrayal behind the collar. But now he stood here, 35 years old, and broken in ways no one could see. He remembered the night he left, the rain, the shouting, the sound of something glass shattering behind him, and his father's voice booming, "You are no son of mine." That voice never stopped echoing, not even in dreams. Michael hated him, but part of him had waited for a crack in the wall, a letter, a word, anything. This envelope was too late, too neat, too clean, and yet it was the only thing his father had left him. Why did that make it feel heavier than anything he'd ever carried? Sister Agnes lit a candle near the altar, her hands shaking. She'd known Father Ellis for 40 years, known his fire, his flaws, his secrets, and she'd watched him wither slowly as the weight of unspoken things crushed the light from his sermons. "He wanted to tell you, Michael," she said gently, as the man turned his face away. "But shame has teeth." Michael didn't respond. His jaw clenched. He hated the guilt creeping in, hated that a part of him still wanted to believe his father tried. Sister Agnes' voice softened further. "He wrote that letter after the diagnosis, said it was time you knew why he sent her away." Michael's heart stopped for a beat. "Her?" he asked. But Sister Agnes just closed her eyes and prayed. Michael held the envelope now. Its paper soft with age, corners bent, the ink of his name slightly smudged. He didn't open it. Not yet. His hands trembled as though they already knew what truth waited inside. The letter weighed more than just paper. It held the breath of a dying man, the last attempt of a father to be more than memory. A woman's name echoed in his head. Sent her away. Who? Why? The silence stretched unbearably until Michael whispered, "I need to know." He didn't say it to Sister Agnes. He said it to the stained glass saints, to the past, to the child inside him still waiting by the church gate, all those years ago, wondering why no one ever came back for him. The letter remained sealed on the pew beside Michael as he stared at the flickering candles. Sister Agnes sat quietly across from him, her fingers locked in silent prayer. "She was your mother," she said finally. The words hit like a cold wind through shattered glass. No, Michael replied, voice flat. My mother died when I was 5. Car crash. That's what he told me. Agnes looked at him with pity sharpened by decades. That's what he needed you to believe. The woman who raised you was his sister. Your real mother, she was sent away. Pregnant. Unmarried. It would have ruined his ordination. Michael's jaw slackened. The pain didn't come all at once. It crept in like fog, slow and smothering. She was never allowed to speak to you. Not once. Sister Agnes placed a hand on his knee. You were his shame, Michael, but her miracle. His eyes welled, but he didn't blink. He felt like a stranger to his own skin. Michael's mind spiraled, chasing shadows of a woman he never knew. Her scent, her voice, her touch. What did it feel like to be held by someone who wasn't ashamed of you? Did she try to come back, he asked. Sister Agnes hesitated. Every year, on your birthday, she stood outside this church just to catch a glimpse. I saw her. I always saw her. Michael closed his eyes, pain flashing like lightning behind them. He watched too, Agnes continued, from behind the curtain in the rectory, but he never stepped out, not once. Michael's hands balled into fists. So he let her stand in the cold like a beggar, while preaching mercy inside these walls? Agnes looked down. He thought silence was protection, but silence is just cruelty dressed in fear. Michael shook his head slowly. All this time, I was angry at the wrong ghost. The image of her waiting, year after year, burrowed into Michael's chest like a thorn. He saw her now, not just as a stranger, but as a wound he carried unknowingly. What happened to her? He asked, voice hoarse. Sister Agnes whispered, cancer. 2 winters ago, she passed with your name on her lips. Michael felt the room tilt. His legs weakened beneath him, and he slumped forward. She died thinking I hated her, he said. No, Agnes interrupted. She died believing you were safe, that you'd grow up unburdened by scandal. She chose exile, for you. He wiped his face with shaking hands. I didn't even get to bury her. Agnes nodded gently. She left you something. It's in the letter, not just words, something more. Michael stared at the envelope again, this time as if it might burn him. I don't know if I can, he said. Agnes replied, then let her love be heavier than your fear. Michael stood now, gripping the pew for balance. The silence was no longer still. It buzzed. 1,000 thoughts screamed behind his eyes. Who was he if not the son of Father Ellis? If not the orphan of a car crash? His identity shattered like brittle glass. He built his life on lies, Michael said, trembling. And I spent mine chasing his approval. Sister Agnes didn't argue. He never forgave himself, she said. But forgiveness isn't earned through suffering. It's earned by truth. Michael paced slowly, eyes never leaving the altar. All these years, and he couldn't say it to my face. Agnes answered gently. He couldn't say it to himself. That broke something in Michael. He slammed his fist against the pew, breath shaking. He chose the church over us. Over her. Over me. His voice cracked, the fury bleeding into grief. And I let him. Agnes stood beside him now. Then don't let the silence win again. The letter opened with a tremble. Michael's fingers hovered, then peeled back the flap. The paper inside was yellowed but neatly folded. No salutation. Just a name written at the top. Moi. His mother's name. Anna Marie. He read slowly, each line carved into him. I failed her. I failed you. The collar I wore demanded sacrifice, but I never thought it would mean burying my own blood. I thought I was protecting you, but I was only protecting myself. She deserved better. You both did. The words blurred as Michael's eyes stung. He reached the last sentence. If I have one request in death, it is that you find her, not in photographs, but in you. because that's where she always lived. Michael folded the letter gently. He didn't sob. But for the first time, the weight of grief no longer paralyzed him. It pointed somewhere. Forward. Michael sat alone in the courtyard behind the chapel, twilight settling over stone walls and creeping vines. The letter rested in his lap, its truth still echoing in every breath he took. He remembered the priesthood ceremonies, the faces of men who called his father shepherd, never knowing the price of his silence. He lied to them too, Michael murmured. Not just to family but to the very people who trusted his voice. And yet, no one knew. The sermons continued. The blessings flowed. But behind every amen was a man broken by his own choices. Michael felt like screaming, but the night was too sacred for noise. Instead, he whispered, "What does it mean if the one who raised me never really saw me? And worse, what if I never saw myself?" The wind picked up. Leaves rustled. Somewhere a bell rang for evening mass. But Michael didn't rise. He was no longer sure where he belonged. The next morning, Michael stood in front of a faded door 2 towns over. The address was scribbled in the corner of the letter, one Sister Agnes had revealed only after seeing him finally read it. The woman who opened the door was in her 60s, auburn gray hair pulled back tightly, eyes tired but sharp. "Michael," she said, as if she'd practiced the name 1,000 times. "I'm your aunt," she added, voice shaking. "My mother's sister," Michael replied. "You knew." She nodded. "He forbade us to speak, said it would undo everything, but I wrote to her in secret until she passed." The silence between them ached. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. He didn't move. Why didn't anyone fight for her? His aunt looked away. "Because your father's shame was louder than our courage." Michael clenched his jaw. "Then let's make her story louder than his silence." Inside, the house was filled with soft remnants of a life paused. Lace curtains yellowed by time, shelves of worn books, a tea kettle still whistling low. His aunt led him to a small room lined with pictures. But there were no frames of weddings or birthdays, just one wall of the same face. His mother, Anna Marie. Young. Older. Smiling. Holding a baby. Staring out at the ocean. She kept every photo, his aunt said. Even when she was forbidden to see you, she found ways to capture you from a distance. Michael stared at one. Him at age 10, riding a bicycle in the church parking lot. "I never knew she was there," he whispered. "She never stopped being your mother," the aunt said. "Even when the world pretended otherwise." His fingers brushed the edge of a photo. "I thought I was abandoned," he said. "Turns out I was hidden. And that was somehow worse." Michael sat at the small kitchen table, nursing tea that had long gone cold. Across from him, his aunt unfolded a sealed envelope, one she'd held back until now. Inside was a simple silver necklace with a tiny charm shaped like a key. "She wanted you to have this," she said. "She wore it every birthday." Michael turned it in his palm, staring at the faint engraving. "You are the door." She used to say that, his aunt recalled, that you were the door to the future, to healing, to breaking the cycle. Michael's throat tightened. "But what am I supposed to unlock?" His aunt looked him in the eye. "Whatever your father kept shut." The words hit him like thunder. Not every door was meant to be opened. But some had to be, even if they shattered the frame. He placed the necklace around his neck and felt, for the first time, that something had been returned to him. Michael stood at the cemetery gate by evening, the letter in one hand, the necklace around his neck. He'd come to find her, his mother. The grave was simple. No flowers. No grand words. Just Anna Marie Ellis. Beloved. He knelt slowly, heart pounding. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I believed everything he told me. I hated you because I thought you left me." His voice cracked. "But you didn't. You stayed in every shadow. Every memory I didn't know was yours." The breeze stirred the trees above, soft and forgiving. I want to know you now, not as a secret, as my mother. He placed the letter beside her name and set the key pendant against the stone. I'll make sure they know. About you. About everything. As he stood, his chest lighter and his spine straighter, the air around him didn't feel so heavy. She had always been there, waiting for him to come home. Michael returned to the church, not as a son seeking closure, but as a man demanding accountability. The pews were empty now. The altar bare. The silence no longer sacred, just hollow. He walked through the nave slowly, each footstep echoing like memory. Sister Agnes sat in the front row, eyes closed in prayer. When she sensed his presence, she opened them and smiled gently. "Will, you found her," she said. Michael nodded. "I found the truth." His voice was steadier now. "And now I need to know. Why did you never tell me?" Agnes looked away, her expression shifting from warmth to shame. "Because I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid the truth would destroy your faith." Michael's face hardened. "The lies did that already." She nodded. "Then let the truth rebuild it, brick by brick, word by word, through you." Michael didn't respond. "And we." But he didn't leave either. Later that evening, Michael opened the old vestry cabinet, his father's personal space once forbidden to all but clergy. Dust curled in the air as he uncovered journals bound in cracked leather. One by one he read the pages. Not sermons. Not doctrine. Confessions. Raw, fragmented entries filled with regret. I watched her leave through the window. Every time. But I never had the courage to run after her. Another. He's growing into a man and I'm shrinking into a shadow. Michael's throat tightened. These weren't the words of a priest. They were the words of a man consumed by the wreckage of his own choices. "He wasn't heartless," Michael whispered. "Just cowardly." The difference mattered now. One was beyond redemption. The other could still be understood. He closed the journal and held it to his chest. The dead couldn't apologize, but they could still be heard. The next Sunday, Michael stood behind the pulpit. For the first time, the congregation was sparse, mostly elders, few regulars. Sister Agnes watched from the front row, eyes filled with both fear and hope. "I'm not a priest," Michael began, his voice clear. "But I am a son of silence, a son of shame, a son of sacrifice." Murmurs rippled across the pews. "For years I believed I was abandoned. The truth is, I was hidden. And the man you all called father, he was more than robes and scripture. He was flawed. Like all of us." Michael paused, heart pounding. "But this place isn't just built on righteousness. It's built on truth. And today, I return that truth to these walls." He didn't preach. He testified. And in doing so, reclaimed something that had been taken, not just from him, but from everyone forced to live in silence. After the service, no one rushed to speak. But no one walked out either. An elderly man approached, removing his cap with trembling hands. "I knew your father when he first came here," he said. "He wasn't always the man he became." Michael nodded, unsure how to respond. Another woman stepped forward. "I was your mother's neighbor," she said. "I saw her watching from the gate all those years." Slowly, memories started surfacing, not just Michael's but the community's. His story had opened a vault. The silence had not just belonged to him. "You're not alone," Sister Agnes whispered. "You never were." That was the strangest part. He believed her. In breaking the silence, he had found others who carried fragments of the same pain. And together, they began gathering those pieces, one story at a time. That night, Michael returned to his mother's grave, not with sorrow, but with gratitude. He sat cross-legged in the grass, moonlight glowing across the headstone. "They know now," he said. "Not just about him, about you." He held a new photograph, own taken earlier that day. Him, standing at the pulpit. "You're not invisible anymore." The wind stirred gently, like breath against the skin. "I used to think silence protected the broken," he said. "But now I know. It only buries them deeper." He placed the photograph next to the grave. "Your voice lives in me now." He stood, the necklace still around his neck, the journals clutched in his hand. This was not the end. It was the uncovering, the resurrection of truth. And as he walked away, the cemetery didn't feel like a place of endings. It felt like a beginning. Michael returned to the rectory one final time. The place smelled of paper and incense, the old floorboards groaning under each step. He opened the last drawer in his father's desk, and inside, beneath a cracked Bible, was a sealed envelope with his name scrawled in trembling ink. "One final truth," the note read. He opened it slowly. Inside was a deed, a plot of land, small, quiet, forgotten, and a letter. "For her. I should have given her more than sorrow. Let this be her place." Michael stared at the paper in disbelief. His father had purchased a piece of land years ago, but never built on it, never told a soul. He kept one promise, Michael whispered, even if too late. And in that moment, rage gave way to something stranger. Respect. Not for the man his father had been, but for the man he tried to become before the end. The land was overgrown and wild, bordered by pine and silence. Michael stepped through the tall grass, boots damp with morning dew. He could see it. Her name etched into a stone, wildflowers planted around it, a bench beneath the tree line. Not a monument. A memory. A place to say her name out loud. "Anna Marie," he whispered, the sound gentle and foreign on his tongue. She had never asked for recognition, only to be seen. And now she would be. Michael picked up a stone, flat and smooth, and placed it where the foundation might be laid. "This is yours," he said. "No shame, no secrets, just truth." The birds sang overhead as if approving. For once, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like permission. To begin. To rebuild. To remember without pain. With the help of a few locals, Michael built the memorial quietly. No fanfare. Just stone, earth and time. Sister Agnes visited often, her presence like a prayer woven into the landscape. They laid the foundation together, her hands steady despite age. "You're doing what he couldn't," she said softly. "Not because you're better, but because you're braver." Michael didn't answer. He simply kept working. Each brick was more than mortar. It was penance, tribute, healing. One day, an old woman came and stood silently at the edge of the field. She left a single yellow rose on the stone. Michael approached her, but she only smiled, tears in her eyes, and said, "She helped me once, when no one else would." Then she walked away. That day Michael understood, his mother hadn't disappeared. She had simply never been honored. Until now. Word of the memorial began to spread. Not loudly, not online, but in letters, in whispers, in memories shared over fences and funerals. People came, mothers, daughters, men who carried their own secrets. Some cried. Some simply sat in silence. Michael welcomed them all. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. The place spoke for itself. It became sacred not because of its beauty, but because of its honesty. Grief lived there, yes, but so did hope. Children drew pictures of angels on stones. Elders planted lilacs. One man left a photo of his own lost daughter with a note. She would have liked her. Michael stood back and let it happen. It wasn't just about Anna Marie anymore. It was about everyone who had ever been erased. And in their memory, something new began to grow. Years later, the memorial remained. Weathered, but never forgotten. The names etched into stone now included others, women once erased, men once silenced, children once lost to shame. And every spring, Michael returned. Not in mourning, in gratitude. He would sit by the bench beneath the pine, journal in hand, necklace still around his neck. One year, A little girl came up to him and asked, "Was she your mom?" He nodded. "She was everyone's mom, in a way." The girl smiled. "She sounds kind." Michael replied, "She was, even when they told her not to be." The girl ran off, and Michael turned the page of his journal, writing one sentence slowly. "Some truths don't heal you. They remind you what healing is worth." And with that, he closed the book, the sun rising behind him, lighting the stones like scripture. Michael returned to the church one last time, not for vengeance, not for confession, but for clarity. The chapel hadn't changed, but he had. He stood beneath the crucifix, staring at the altar where his father once preached. "You spoke of redemption," he said aloud, voice echoing gently. "But you never gave yourself any." He approached the pulpit, running his fingers over the worn wood. "You were terrified of being seen, of letting your son know you were human. Weak. Afraid." He paused, then added softly, "But I see you now." He wasn't forgiving yet. Not fully, but he was understanding. And in understanding, there was peace. He knelt beside the altar, not to pray, but to rest, to breathe, to let go of the weight that never truly belonged to him. Behind him, Sister Agnes watched quietly, her eyes filled with relief. The silence this time was gentle. Later that day, Michael sat with Sister Agnes in the courtyard, sipping tea under the old oak. The wind rustled gently through the leaves, whispering like voices past. "Do you regret staying silent?" he asked. She looked at him for a long moment. "Every day, but regret isn't punishment. It's a compass, if you listen to it." Michael nodded slowly. "Do you think he ever meant to make things right?" She didn't answer immediately. He wanted to. But wanting isn't enough. You have to act, and he waited too long. Michael stared at the sky. "I won't." He didn't just mean with his father's memory, but with himself, with others, with whatever came next. Sister Agnes smiled. "Then you've already changed everything." The oak tree groaned softly as if in agreement, its branches stretching upward like a hymn. Michael returned to the memorial once more, this time bringing others. Children from the town. Teens with questions. Elderly strangers with stories. He began holding circles, quiet gatherings where people could speak or sit or simply listen. "This isn't a place of sorrow," he would say. "It's a place for stories untold." A teenage girl once asked him, "Do you think people can really change?" Michael smiled. "Not easily, but yes, when the truth matters more than pride." Each story told became a stone placed, a flower planted, a wound acknowledged. He never tried to become a leader, but in sharing, he became one. Not by title, by trust. And it was in this giving, this gentleness, that Michael finally saw the face of his mother, not in pictures, but in how people felt safe near him, as if they were known. One afternoon, a young man approached Michael after a gathering. He hesitated before speaking. "My father beat my mother," he said quietly. "The church told her to stay." Michael listened. No interruptions. No pity. Nah. Just presence. "She's gone now. Cancer," the boy added. "And I never forgave her for staying." Michael nodded slowly. "Maybe she stayed for you." The boy's face crumbled. "What if I become him?" Michael placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then be louder than his silence. Be gentler than his rage." The boy wept, and Michael didn't speak again. Some moments didn't need words. Just witness. He realized then, this was the cycle breaking, not with noise or fame, but with stillness, with a hand on the shoulder, with the choice to hold, not hurt. Legacy, he realized, wasn't what you leave behind. It's what you stop from repeating. As spring turned to summer, the memorial became more than a space. It became a living thing. Flowers grew from stories. Stones bore names. Children laughed there now. One evening, Michael walked the edge of the field as fireflies danced around him. He carried a notebook, full of letters never sent and apologies never received. But that was okay. He had learned, healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without fear. As he reached the pine tree, he looked back at what had grown. Not from perfection, but from pain made visible. Truth, he whispered, isn't always soft, but it's sacred. He placed the notebook in a wooden box at the base of the tree. A new tradition. For anyone else who had something to say but no one left to hear it. He walked away without looking back. Some stories don't need closure, just release. The church doors creaked as Michael stepped inside for one final visit. Years had passed. Dust had softened the pews, but the light still poured in like it remembered him. He walked the aisle, not as a son burdened by shadows, but as a man who had learned to walk with them. He stopped at the pulpit where he once spoke his truth. His hand rested on the same wood, now worn smooth by time and confession. "You weren't just my father," he whispered into the silence. "You were my beginning, even in your failure." He smiled faintly. "And now I'm my own man, because of you, and despite you." He stepped back and bowed his head, not in reverence, but in recognition. The ghosts in these walls no longer scared him. They'd become part of his story. And part of the story he now helped others tell. Outside, the town had changed little, but the people had. Whispers turned into conversations. Secrets became stories. Michael had sparked something, quiet but relentless. He walked through the village square, greeted not by applause, but by eyes that met his honestly. "Your mother would be proud," one woman said, offering him a jar of preserved peaches. "You gave her a name again." Michael smiled, warmth blooming in his chest. "She gave it to me first." Kids ran past him, laughing, their joy unburdened by the past. In their play, he saw what had once been denied to him. But not anymore. He hadn't rewritten history. He had revealed it. And in doing so, he'd rewritten the future. Not in bold proclamations, but in steady truth. And now, it belonged to all of them. Michael stood beneath the pine tree again, now taller than before, its branches thicker, stronger. The memorial had grown too, stones weathered by rain, but not forgotten. He traced his mother's name gently. "They say time heals," he murmured. "But truth lets us breathe again." A young couple approached with a newborn. "We named her Anna," the mother said. Michael's eyes shimmered. "Shall grow in the light," he whispered. They nodded, and he stepped aside so they could sit. As he watched them, he realized he wasn't the center of the story anymore. And that felt right. What had begun with a scream in a chapel now echoed in laughter, in life. Legacy wasn't about names etched in marble. It was about what you freed others to become. And Anna Marie, once silenced, now lived in every voice that dared to speak. That evening, Michael walked a quiet path leading away from the field, his steps slow, unburdened. He carried no letter, no journal, just the air and the memory of a woman who had waited a lifetime to be seen. As fireflies began to glow, he stopped at a small stream, watching water slip over stones. "There's no fixing the past," he said softly. "But there's power in facing it." His reflection rippled, fractured yet whole. The necklace still hung around his neck, a quiet symbol, not of pain, but of passage, of transition, of truth honored. He dipped his fingers into the stream and let the coolness ground him. No more secrets, no more shame. The night didn't feel dark anymore. It felt honest, like a lullaby sung by a mother finally heard. Before he left the village, Michael placed a final plaque beneath the pine. "Truth is not what we inherit, it's what we choose to carry." He stood back and read the words aloud. They weren't just for her. They were for every father too scared to speak, every son too hurt to ask, every mother erased by silence, and for every child waiting at the gate. He smiled, not with triumph, but with tenderness. The journey wasn't clean. It was jagged, stitched with grief. But it was his, and hers, and theirs. And as he walked away for the last time, birds called from the trees, wind sweeping gently over the grass. His final words hung in the air like scripture. Sometimes, the only way to forgive your father is to become the kind of man he couldn't.